Hey there, I'm in Peacehaven for the Mince Pie 10-mile race, which is a sort of road and trail race. I've got no idea what the terrain's going to be like really, I've not really investigated it. But I'm going to head off now to do the race. I'm testing out the Puma Fast-Trac NITRO semi-trail shoes and the Coros Apex 2. Right, time to run, back in a bit. Right, I'm done now. That was pretty tough. It's also quite windy and cold out here, so I'm going to go home and I'm going to record my thoughts on the race and the kit. Catch you in a bit. Okay, so I'm back now from the Mince Pie 10-mile race. Now, down south on the south coast, this is quite a famous race. Quite a lot of people do it every year. I'd never actually heard of it until this year, but I saw a lot of people talking about it and I wanted to do it. But I didn't really know a lot about the race. I didn't know if it was a road race. I didn't know if it was a trail race. I'd heard some people mention that I needed trail shoes for it, but when I looked at the course map, quite a lot of it is on road. So it's quite an interesting race, and it's quite challenging in some ways because some of it is quite heavily focused on running on flat roads. Quite a lot of it is on quite hilly trails. And the race itself is 10 miles, and I think there's probably about 6k on roads, and then the rest of it is out on the trails. But the trails themselves aren't actually that severe. I've done a lot of races recently over the South Downs, and some of the routes can be pretty technical. This was generally over public footpaths across a couple of fields, but it wasn't a really heavy trail race. It was a very hard trail race though, and I wasn't really prepared for it. There were probably about 500 people doing the race. It's a Christmas race, so there's like a fun vibe to it, but it's also quite a serious race as well. Some of the people that ran at the front of the race were pretty fast, and so they were getting times of, I think the fastest guy got about 55 minutes, which is really fast considering how tough this event was. I ran the race at 1 hour 11 for a 10 mile. My PB is 1 hour 4, and I was really going for it quite hard. I wasn't taking it easy on this race, and normal I do on trail races, so it was a pretty tough race and I couldn't have got much faster if I'd tried. Now the reason for that was because there was a couple of really big hills in it. So there are 2 hills and they are between about 80 to 100 meters of climb, but it's pretty steep climb, so it really does take it out of you. And after I did the second one, which was all on road, so the first hill is on trails, but the second hill is all the way up these cliff facing roads, and it's relentless. Just go up and up and up this road and it just completely destroys you. And it took me about a kilometre to get myself back down again to run comfortably for the last 6k or so. As a lot of it is on public footpaths, there is quite a lot of funneling as well. So if you're going to run fast in this race, make sure you get quite far ahead because it can get a little bit tricky to overtake people at certain points. Later on in the race I was so tired because of the hills that I didn't really mind that funneling, but it's well worth taking into consideration because if you start later back you're going to get stuck behind a lot of people in those thin public footpaths. The terrain of the trail sections was not too bad. It's been raining a lot in the UK at the moment and some of the downs is not very nice to run on. The paths that we ran on during the race weren't actually that bad today. They were quite muddy, but not really wet, sloppy mud. So it wasn't too bad to get a hold on the ground and you could pick up the pace quite nicely on certain sections. Some of the sections also had quite a lot of gravelly bits to them, so they were a bit tricky. If you not too confident about running fast downhill, then probably take it easy on those ones because it can get a bit slippy with that gravel, and it's probably not one to risk running really hard on if you're worried about falling over at some point. So it's a good race to do if you want to try the trails but want something a little bit more accessible for people. It's not a full-on trail race and it gives you a little bit of a feel about what trail races are. Equally, it's not a road race, so you will need some tougher shoes to deal with the ground because it's in November, and November down south can get a little bit muddy and wet. But overall, the organisation was absolutely fantastic. I didn't see anybody get lost. The signage was fantastic. The paths were very clear, and if there was ever a point where there was quite a tight turn on the downs, then there was always a person there to point you the right way. So no issues at all with the course. Really enjoyed it. And after you cross the finish line, it was fantastic. It's called the Mince Pie 10 miles. You get a mince pie at the end. You also get a little goodie bag with a banana in it and some crisps. And you get a nice little Christmas medal as well, which I'm very, very pleased with. I think it's one of my favourite medals that I've got this year. So overall, I really enjoyed the race, and it's well worth doing even if you don't live down south. It's a nice little trip out to the seaside, and it's well worth seeing the views and everything that you get, and it's just a very enjoyable Christmas event to do. Maybe not one if you're looking for a fast race, because it is by no means a fast race. It's quite a tricky course, and it's very difficult to maintain a pace and really go all out, because those hills just take it out of you. And some of the muddy areas and the grass sections will slow you down quite a bit. Right, let's jump into the kit. So as I mentioned, I didn't really know much about this race. I wasn't sure if it was a trail race. I wasn't sure if it was more of a road race. And I couldn't really find a lot of information out from people as to what I should be wearing for this. A lot of people in the running club that I'm a member of were talking about the types of shoes that you should wear for it. And there's a bit of discussion as to whether it was more of a road shoe that you need or a trail shoe. When I was planning my shoe, I was actually going to test out the Salomon Speedcross 6. And I'm really glad I didn't, because the amount of roads that was on it, about 6k or so, would have made the Speedcross 6 an awful shoe to run in, because it would have been very painful, very hard, and I would want more cushioning on it and a little bit more bounce. So luckily, recently I've started testing the Puma Fast-Trac NITRO, and it's perfect timing for this shoe, because it's designed to do everything. So road, trail, canal paths. This shoe is basically a road shoe that's just been amped up a bit so that it's got a bit more trail capability to it. And it was fantastic. I thought it was really comfortable to wear. I thought it was nice and snappy and fast as well. On the road sections, it felt great. I could definitely pick up the pace quite nicely, and I was going pretty fast for the first few kilometres on the road, and this felt great for that. I did mention in our first run review that I probably wouldn't go over about 5k in this shoe. I still would say that's the case on the road. It's just a little bit too firm for me on the road, but it was fine for that race because I was running at a faster pace. I wasn't too worried about the cushioning, and it just did a fantastic job. Now, the trails that we were running on were a bit of a mix. So there was some loose gravel, there was some quite steep declines, and some quite muddy inclines as well. So this outsole that's on the Fast-Trac NITRO just did the job perfectly. It's not too aggressive. It's really just there to take you from the road to lighter trails and keep you safe and give you a bit of grip when you need it. But it's not going all the way. So it's not like you're wearing a Speedcross shoe or something like that. But it does the job really nicely. I didn't have any issues on that route at all. I felt very supported. I felt very in control. I didn't feel like I was slipping at all. And because of those massive inclines that we were doing, I did get a little bit excited on the downhills and push myself a little bit further than I would normally do on downhills. I'm not a big fan of running fast downhill, especially on the trails, but I felt great in these. It felt like it was gripping the surface of the ground perfectly, but also it felt really light and comfortable as well. So it just was the perfect shoe for that run, and I'm very pleased that I got sent these to test out a couple of weeks ago, because I couldn't have worn a better shoe for that race. It's basically a race designed to test this shoe out. So yeah, Puma Fast-Trac NITRO, I think I found the perfect race for it. I really enjoyed it, and well worth a look if you're the sort of runner that is doing a mix of road and trail, but trails that aren't going too severe. So the sort of stuff where you might be on a public footpath, you might be on a canal path, and you just want something to give you a bit more control, a bit more security on the ground, without losing the feel of a faster, more comfortable road shoe. The other thing I was testing out today is the Coros Apex 2. Now, I've been testing out the Coros Apex 2 Pro quite a bit over the past few weeks. Really enjoying testing that watch, and I've switched to the Apex 2. Now, interestingly, I didn't really find much of a difference between these two watches. The main thing for me is that the Apex 2 is just a little bit smaller and a bit more comfortable. So I've actually been enjoying wearing this watch a bit more than the Apex 2 Pro. In terms of the actual features that you get on it, there are some differences between the two watches, but nothing that I've really been using. So the Apex 2 is really, I'm more impressed with this than I am the Apex 2 Pro, especially because the cost is so different between those two watches. What I would say about the watch on that run is that it was a little bit off the total distance. So it was a 16k race. I picked up 15.7 on the Apex 2. Not massively out, but it's a little bit out. So if you really do care about getting that distance right, then that might be an issue for you. And there were no massive buildings or anything around today, so there wasn't really anything affecting it. We were like right up in the middle of the South Downs, so there shouldn't have had any issues with the satellites and things like that. So not a massive difference, but not great if you're really focused on that accuracy. The other thing I would say about it as well, and this might be to do with the accuracy of the GPS, is that the pacing seemed off for me on quite a few of the kilometers. I looked down at my watch a few times in the first 5k and I thought that can't be right. I'm definitely not running that slow. I feel like I'm running faster, and I think it just takes a while for the Apex 2 to sort of catch up and work out what speed you're actually running at, which isn't a major problem. But if you're really focused on pacing and you use your watch like very closely to run your races, then that may be a slight issue. I was also wearing my Garmin Fenix 6 Pro, and the pacing on this was much better. And there are issues with the GPS on the 6 Pro, but I do find that the pacing is a lot more accurate when I'm running against the Apex 2. So that's it from me from the Mince Pie 10 mile over in Peacehaven on the south coast. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click that little bell, and check the channel out for all the other videos we've got. And if you click in the caption below, you can find the link to the podcast provider of your choice for our podcast series, where the latest one is our awards. So if you're listening to this in December, we've just had our yearly awards, and you can find out all the winners of that if you listen to the podcast. Thanks a lot for watching. Catch you next time.